In Revenge of the Sith, Anakin Skywalker reaches his breaking point. He tells Mace Windu, the Chancellor's office erupts and the night collapses into lightning and loss. A window shatters, a hand is severed, a choice is made, and everything burns. But what if Anakin chose differently? What if he turned away from Windu, sought the oldest voice in the Order, and asked Yoda for guidance instead? In this version of the story, that's exactly what happens. And nothing turns out the same. Let's begin. Anakin stepped onto the edge of the Republic Executive Building's hangar deck. The traffic lanes of Coruscant flickering like a starfield dragged across steel. The city's sunset bled orange into violet. Airspeeders traced bright ribbons between towers. It was the view he always used to steady his breath. Not tonight. He tried Obi-Wan's frequency first. Cody answered instead. Obi-Wan was still engaged with Grievous. The words he needed, the words he feared, jammed at the back of his throat. He cut the line, swallowed hard, and stared into the wind. Yoda, he thought, if anyone will hear me without anger, it's him. His fingers moved before the doubt could return. Far away, on Kashyyyk, a small comlink chirped among humming canopies and rusher trunks. Commander Gree fetched it. Yoda listened, eyes quietly narrowing. Master Yoda, Anakin said, I need to tell you something important. Calm yourself, you must, Yoda murmured. What troubles you? Anakin let it out in one breath. The Sith Lord we've been looking for, the Chancellor, Palpatine told me himself. The forest noise on Kashyyyk seemed to fall away. Certain are you? Yes, Master, he knows my fear. He offered things I shouldn't want. The dark side preys on your suffering, Yoda said softly. A trap, this is. Near him you must not go. Return to the temple. Speak to the council, we will. Haste without thought, exactly what he desires. Anakin closed his eyes and something unclenched. It wasn't relief. But it was a way forward that didn't end with him alone in a room with a monster. Master, he asked, voice small despite the armor and rank. What if he's right about saving Padme? Visions show possibilities, not fate, Yoda said. Trust the Force, not your fear. Back to the temple. Wait for me. Soon return I will. The line clicked off. Wind raced across the hangar and tugged at his cloak. For the first time since Palpatine had whispered the word, Sith, Anakin wasn't moving toward the Chancellor's office. He was moving away. The temple hangar looked different when you were guarding a secret that could bring down a government. The air felt heavier. The clones at the doors watched everything. On the landing platform, Mace Windu stood, face drawn and unreadable. Yoda informed us, Windu said, matching Anakin's stride. You're certain? Yes, Master. We don't move until Yoda returns, Windu answered. The Chancellor wants a rash strike. He wants us to look like traitors. Anakin swallowed. What if he's right about my visions? Windu's gaze didn't soften, but his voice did. The dark side can only offer you a price you won't want to pay. We'll protect Senator Amidala, we'll protect you both. But we act as Jedi. A temple guard approached. General Skywalker, there's a holocall. Obi-Wan's image flickered to life in a side corridor, wind still whipping around his neckline from Utapau. Cody said you tried to reach me. What happened? Anakin looked at the floor, then met Obi-Wan's eyes. The Chancellor is the Sith Lord, he told me. Silence. Then a quick nod, crisp and decisive. I'm on my way back to Coruscant. We face this together. The call ended. Anakin exhaled and started toward the council chamber. He didn't make it far. Anakin. The voice froze him mid-step. Ahsoka. She'd come in fast from Mandalore, cloak stiff with travel dust, eyes bright with something he rarely saw in her, unease. We need to talk. Before we captured Maul, he told me Sidious has been grooming you. He tried to draw you to Mandalore to end him. Anakin didn't flinch. He only closed his eyes for a beat, then nodded. He's Palpatine, Ahsoka. You were right to distrust him, I told Yoda. Ahsoka's jaw set. Then let me help. You already have. The council room filled with familiar faces in unfamiliar moods. Holograms shivered above the dais, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Plo Koon, others beaming in from outer sectors. In their chairs sat Windu, Yoda's image arriving soon after, and, fresh from Utapau's sinkholes, Obi-Wan, still dust-scarred but alive. Ahsoka stood behind Anakin, arms folded, a steady anchor. Yoda's voice carried the weight of old wars. Revealed, Sidious has. The Senate, the courts, the army, under his hand they are. Hasty attack he expects. If we strike blind, destroyed we may be. Windu leaned forward. We consider the clones. The words settled like lead. Fives, warning, hushed, doubted, buried by convenience, rose into the open. Inhibitor chips. A command that could turn brothers into executioners. Order 66, Obi-Wan said quietly. If he is who we fear, he built this war for that order. Then we need a counter, Ahsoka said. A legal one, something that doesn't look like a coup. Yoda's eyes half closed. Long forgotten, Order 65 is not. If unfit, if treason proven, remove the Chancellor, the Senate may. Allies we must gather, Bail Organa, Mon Mothma. Quietly warn commanders we trust, Rex, Cody. Prepare the ground, move as one. While we do, Shakti added, we answer the question of the chips at its source. Kamino, Windu said. Shakti nodded. If Tyrannus handled the army, after Sifo-Dyas, the Kaminoans may have been misled. If there is a way to remove chips, quietly, in numbers, we take it. We cede Coruscant with clones who won't turn their rifles on us. Anakin frowned. Master, what about the Separatists? If Palpatine can keep their leaders safe. The war drags on, Obi-Wan spoke up, the hunter's focus back in his eyes. One of Grievous, Magnagard's was captured. Its memory core referenced a relocation order, Mustafar. If we move quickly, we may capture the Separatist Council intact. Windu considered the board as a whole. Legal cover, political allies, clean clone battalions, a captured enemy leadership. For the first time in a long war, the path forward didn't feel like a trap. We do all of it, he said, at once. Yoda raised his comlink. Across the galaxy, Jedi stopped mid-stride, mid-meditation, mid-mission, to listen as the Grand Master's image flickered into their halls, carriers, and forward bases. Jedi, Yoda said, a storm comes. Return to Coruscant you must for debrief and redeployment. The message was for the Order. The meaning beneath it was for the Order's survival. Come home, away from clones you cannot yet trust. At the same time, a quieter operation unfolded in the temple's deep archives. Hidden star maps unfurled, coordinates to a world most had never heard spoken aloud. Talor glowed with soft light. Masters and caretaker droids gathered younglings under the pretense of a training retreat. No panic, no fear, just a new destination, strong in the light, off the main lanes and out of harm's way. The Republic's most vulnerable citizens vanished into safety without a whisper. Kamino did not give up the truth easily, but it gave it up. Shakti stood across from Lama Su as rain battered the silver water beyond the glass. She asked her first question. The Prime Minister met it with the primacy of contracts. She asked her second. He met it with pride. She asked her third. He blinked. A Jedi named Tyrannus, Lama Su admitted at last, handled much of the commissioning after Sifo-Dyas. The inhibitor chips, an off-spec edition, were presented as a safeguard, should your order fracture. We were told secrecy was essential. If there are misunderstandings, Kamino regrets. Enough, Shakti said. Can they be removed? In every clone, difficult. And those stationed here, possible. Then do it, now, thousands, quietly, no delays. Those men ship with me to Coruscant. She wasn't asking. The medbays lit through the night. The Senate Grand Convocation Chamber had a way of turning certainty to noise. Today it did something stranger. It turned hope to doubt, then back to something sharper. It began with Yoda's pod gliding into the center, Windu and Obi-Wan flanking, Anakin standing a step back, steadying his breath. The hall burst into cheers at the earliest announcement. Grievous dead, Dooku gone, the Separatist Council located, the war nearly over. Then Yoda kept speaking. Another truth there is, he said, in darkness, hidden, the Sith Lord, revealed. A wave of confusion moved through the tiers. Palpatine leaned forward in the Chancellor's box, features composed, hands steepled. Windu spoke next, voice firm. We have reason to believe a Sith Lord has used this war to seize control of the Republic. We have testimony, we have targets in custody, and we have a Jedi Knight who can tell you what he heard." Anakin's pod rose. He looked out at 1,000 world eyes, felt the weight of the one gaze that mattered, and said the words anyway. "Chancellor Palpatine told me he is the Sith Lord known as Darth Sidious." The chamber erupted. Shouts, protests, cries for proof. Palpatine's expression didn't flicker, but the air around him felt colder. The Jedi brought their next witness. Darth Maul, bound and fuming, glared at the light. "He is Sidious," he spat, every syllable raw. "He made me, he broke me. He used me as a knife and threw me away." Many senators recoiled, many dismissed him. Some, just enough, looked at Anakin again. Palpatine finally stood, voice velvet over stone. "Honored senators," he said, "we are witnessing confusion, grief, fear, understandable after a long war. General Skywalker has misread philosophy for conspiracy. As for this creature's ravings, you know what he is." He spread his arms as if to embrace the hall. "I invite the Jedi to my office to clear the air. We are all servants of the same republic." Yoda inclined his head. "We accept." In the pods, Bail Organa and Mon Mothma caught each other's eye. Their aides were already moving, toward military oversight, toward the hidden casebooks where Order 65 had slept under dust and legalese. In the temple, Ahsoka Tano slid 2 fingers across a datapad, confirming the arrival of the chip-free battalions Shakti had demanded. In a far-off med center, Padme Amidala locked her door, placed her hand over her stomach, and tried to breathe. Coruscant was a planet built on momentum. For the first time in months, the Jedi controlled it. The door to the Chancellor's office slid open with an almost polite sigh. Palpatine was alone. The Knight turned his window into a black mirror, the city lights pinpricked like stars behind it. He had dismissed his guards. He had placed a shuttle on standby no one could see. The room smelled faintly of ozone and polished wood. He smiled without warmth when the Jedi entered. "Master Windu, Master Yoda, Kenobi, Skywalker, Master Shakti, Master Kalar," he said, naming them like pieces on a board. "How generous to bring so many of your finest to discuss." "We're done discussing," Windu said. "In the name of the Galactic Senate of the Republic, you are under arrest." Palpatine's eyes shone brighter yellow for a heartbeat. "Are you threatening me, Master Jedi?" "Your fate will be decided by the Senate," Windu replied. Palpatine's smile fell away like a mask slipping off a hook. "I am the Senate." The red blade ignited in a burst of hateful light. Blaster bolts lanced from the flanks as clones at the door stepped forward and did not fire at the Jedi. At Windu's earlier nod, they had raised rifles and taken aim at the single figure who had always thought of them as numbers. Their shots poured toward Palpatine like rain against Durasteel. He moved like a storm. Deflections blossomed in a blur, statues shattered, wood blackened. The window's transparent steel shivered, but held. Blaster fire stopped at Windu's second command. 6 blades hissed alive as one. "Together," Obi-Wan said. Yoda didn't answer. He was already moving. Palpatine met the first 2 strikes with ease. 3 more drew a frown. The 6th, the smallest, turned his scowl into something close to worry. Yoda's green blade rained down from above, vanished, and came up from below. Windu's purple edge carved lines he didn't expect. Obi-Wan linked parries into counters and angled the fight away from the window. Shakti and Anakin Kolar wove their attacks not to kill but to constrict. And Anakin stayed in the pocket, exactly where every instinct told him to leap ahead. He watched. He cut only when it mattered. Palpatine laughed, then screamed, then laughed again. "Skywalker," he hissed between parries, "you want to save her? You need me. They will let her die. I can teach you to stop it." Anakin didn't look away from the blade. "You taught me enough already." The next exchange was faster than breath. Windu locked Palpatine's saber high. Shakti and Kolar angled low. Obi-Wan stepped through the opening and knocked Sidious off balance. Yoda flashed past as a green streak. And in 3 emerald arcs, the fight ended. Palpatine dropped to the floor roaring, limbs severed, saber dead. The office smelled of scorched metal and burned marble. The window finally did crack then, a web of stress lines dancing across it, as if the city outside had held its breath for too long. Windu moved first, cuffing what remained of the most dangerous man in the galaxy. "You're under arrest," he repeated. "Not because Palpatine could escape, but because words matter when you rebuild worlds." Anakin stood over the Chancellor of the Republic and listened to his own heartbeat. It was loud and human and messy. It didn't sound like destiny, and it didn't sound like chains. Yoda glanced at the clones by the door. "Execute a command he cannot," the Grandmaster said. "Stand down you will. Secure the prisoner you must." One of the troopers, helmet tucked under his arm, chip gone, loyalty his own, nodded. "Yes, sir." In a volcano system at the far end of the galaxy, clone commandos were closing blast doors and cutting power to an opulent conference room as Neimoidians shouted, "Surrender!" In the Senate's back halls, a document no one had expected to use in their lifetime was being dusted and signed. On a quiet terrace, Ahsoka Tano finally let out a breath she had been holding since Mandalore. The trap had been sprung, only this time the Sith fell into it. The corridors outside the Chancellor's office were chaos without panic. Guards cycling in, droids scanning for explosives, clones establishing a cordon while pointedly ignoring the sputtering threats from their former commander-in-chief. The Jedi didn't crow or posture. They did what they always did when a fight ended. They cleared the room, checked the wounded, and prepared for what the next hour would demand. For once, the next hour belonged to them. Bail Organa met Windu at the edge of the landing concourse with a small flight of senatorial guards and a datapad that might as well have been a lightsaber. "Order 65 is in effect," Bail said quietly. On emergency recommendation of the Military Oversight Committee and with immediate concurrence from the acting leadership, he's removed from office pending trial. The Grand Army answers to the Senate again. Windu inclined his head. "Then it's over." Bail's mouth tightened. "The war isn't paper. It won't end just because we all sign the line. It will end because we brought the people who started it into a room they couldn't burn their way out of," Windu said, and for the first time in years, the edge in his voice wasn't anger. It was relief. Palpatine's stretcher floated by, surrounded by clones who did not meet his eyes. Even maimed, even cuffed, he tried one last line. "Skywalker," he said, voice low and venom smooth, "you killed me the moment you spoke to them. Remember that, when Anakin stopped. He didn't turn around. You don't get to say her name." Yoda's small hand touched his sleeve. "Come," the Master said, "work, still there is." Mustafar looked like a wound in space. The clones sent there, under Cody's coordination, moved with the quiet efficiency of men who had survived 1,000 ambushes and didn't plan on dying in a conference room. Battle droids fell fast to thermal detonators and disciplined fire, their rigid programming no match for soldiers who improvised for a living. The Separatist Council, Newt Gunray, Wat Tambor, Poggle, and the others were alive and angry and suddenly less brave without a hologram of a hooded figure to promise safety. "We were told we'd be protected," Newt Gunray whimpered as binders clicked shut. "By whom?" a clone sergeant asked, not unkindly. The Sith Lord," Tambor said, voice buzzing through a cracked vocoder. "Darth Sid." The sergeant looked at the ceiling as if asking the galaxy to give him one simple day. "Right, let's go." By the time their transports left the lava behind, Palpatine was in a med cell beneath the Senate, and the rumor of his fall had reached systems that didn't care about rumors at all. Some warlords ran, some tried to hold territory, most waited to see who would shoot first now that the loudest man had lost his voice. For once, the Jedi shot second. The Senate's emergency session looked nothing like the one that had begun the day. The same tears, the same pods, a different kind of silence. Mon Mothma's voice was cool and steady. A motion to confirm the removal of Supreme Chancellor Palpatine for cause. A motion to appoint an interim leadership council with limited emergency powers. A motion to instruct the Advocate General to prepare charges of treason, conspiracy, and war crimes. A motion to review and, where necessary, repeal wartime measures that expanded executive authority. Bail Organa seconded. Others followed. The votes rolled in like a tide. No one said the words, "We were fooled." They didn't need to. They said, "Never again," and set about making that promise something other than a platitude. In a separate chamber without cameras, the Jedi laid out what only they could. Maul's testimony cross-checked with captured separatists, Grievous's data core, Kamino in contracts bearing the name Tyrannus, med scans of rows upon rows of inhibitor chips, a timeline that showed a pattern so obvious that no one would have seen it without being battered by it first. They did not present it to humiliate a fallen Chancellor. They presented it so that when history was written, the lie wouldn't be the only thing anyone remembered. Anakin didn't attend the first hearings. He asked the council for leave and they granted it without debate. Titles mattered less than people now. Padme opened her door before he could knock. She didn't ask for news. She didn't need to. It was written in the lines of his face and the way his shoulders finally didn't look like they were carrying a fleet. "Is it over?" she asked. "It's ending," he said. "He can't hurt us anymore." She let out a breath she'd been holding since Geonosis. "And you?" "I told Yoda the truth," he said, almost surprised to hear himself say it. "I stood in front of the Senate and didn't break. I stood in front of him and didn't bend. I thought saving you meant I had to do what he wanted. Yoda was right. Visions aren't fate." Padme reached for his hand and pressed it to her stomach. "Then come home," she whispered. "Stay, for a while." The council didn't make him choose. They posted plainclothes guards discreetly. They rotated a small circle of Jedi and trusted clones to the apartment block at the edge of the Federal District. Ahsoka dropped by and talked nonsense to the baby and pretended not to smile when Anakin argued charmingly with a kettle. Obi-Wan stopped on his way to committee rooms and left with a bag of food every time, as if rescue missions came in the shape of fruit. Anakin was still a Jedi. He just wasn't a weapon anymore. In the temple, work replaced mourning. That didn't mean there was no grief. What they learned about the chips sent silent tears into robes under hoods. But grief didn't paralyze them. Shifts of masters and healers took in the first wave of clones from Kamino, whose heads bore small scars but whose eyes looked clearer than they had since birth. Brothers passed word along ships and outposts that there were medics who could help, commanders who would listen, generals who would not treat them like assets to be reclaimed when they broke. Rex stood longer in the light than he had in years, and felt something like agency settle in his chest. Shakti and the Kaminoan technicians built a pipeline no one outside the circle needed to see, a way to strip out a bad order before it could be given. It was tedious, quiet work. It was the kind of work that kept wars from reigniting. Yoda kept the younglings away from the city until the first trials were over. On Talor, mornings smelled like clean air and old trees. Children learned to listen to the Force without flinching like it was about to be taken from them. Windu took a different task. He walked through departments with names like procurement and logistics and found the signatures that had propped up a dictatorship, then turned all that paper into a weapon against the shadow that had wielded it. There were no duels in those rooms. There were victories. Obi-Wan testified before oversight panels with the precision of a surgeon and the patience of a teacher. He didn't make speeches, he answered questions. The truth sounded like the truth. Ahsoka never asked to rejoin the Order, and no one asked her to. She did the work anyway, in hallways rather than chambers. She had a way of standing beside clone officers so they remembered they were people, then turning and standing beside senators so they remembered clones were people too. When Maul realized he had survived again, he laughed and threw his tray at a wall and called everyone a coward. Then he told them what he knew about Palpatine's off-world caches and safe houses. Because hatred makes strange allies. The Jedi took the intel, logged it, and didn't pretend the man who gave it was anything but what he was. Some truths you use, some you don't befriend. The trial itself was not a spectacle. It couldn't be. Too much had been turned into theaters already. A rotation of senators from worlds as different as Chandrila and Ryloth sat the bench. Advocates presented. Records played. The man once called the most gifted orator in the Republic spoke for himself and found that without mystery, his voice was smaller than he remembered. He tried to make the case that he had been forced to extreme measures by the Jedi's ambition. He was confronted with contracts signed 2 wars earlier. He tried to make the case that he had wielded emergency powers reluctantly. He was confronted with memos authorizing abductions and disappearances in gentle language. He tried to make the case that he had planned to relinquish control once the war was safely concluded. He was confronted with shipments to an empty throne room and a second superweapon in a planner's drawer. He did not confess, he did not repent, he did not matter. The verdict didn't end the story, it closed the door and opened 1,000. Charges, treason, conspiracy, war crimes, sentence, life, in a cell designed less like a cage and more like an answer to a question the Jedi had been wrestling with for years: what justice looks like when the criminal is too dangerous to execute and too poisonous to release. It was not mercy, it was a decision. The Republic rescinded what it could, repaired what it could not rescind, and learned that laws weren't guardrails so much as promises you had to keep even when they were inconvenient. That lesson stuck. When the war sputtered into silence, there was a day in the gardens at dusk when Anakin, in civilian clothes he didn't quite know how to wear, stood with Obi-Wan while the first stars came out. "You did it," Obi-Wan said, the way he might have said "you parried that correctly" to a Padawan 13 years before. "I almost didn't," Anakin answered. "I wanted certainty. I wanted to fix the future, and then I saw the future wasn't a path, it was a sea." Obi-Wan smiled. "The old master will be insufferable when he hears you say that." "He already is." They stood in easy quiet, and for once, the silence didn't feel like something was about to break. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I'd gone to Windu first?" Anakin asked. "I think the same thing Yoda thinks," Obi-Wan said. "That the line between what did happen and what might have is thinner than a hair. And I think you chose well." Anakin didn't look up. "I had help." "Of course you did, that's what makes it a choice." The Order did not return to the old ways. They couldn't. The old ways had trusted distance over connection, procedure over people. They wrote new doctrine with ink and with the memory of what almost happened. Attachments weren't forbidden, they understood. Emotions weren't denied, they were trained. The Jedi didn't try to be an army again. They partnered where they could help and stepped back where their swords only complicated things. They became witnesses and healers, and, when needed, the thin line between violence and worse violence. They remained guardians. They remembered to be friends. Anakin trained less and listened more. He still fought when called. He still grinned when a flight stick fit his hand. But he began to understand why Yoda had always sounded like he was hearing a song no one else could hear. Padme survived childbirth in a sun-washed room with hands she trusted at her side. She did not give speeches that night. She slept, and the galaxy felt, for once, like it could shrink to a couch and a crib, and the sound of someone laughing at nothing. Ahsoka took long assignments that put her on outer lanes, and backwater docks, where law was a face you recognized and not a statute. She sent messages that were mostly jokes, and sometimes coordinates. She became the friend everyone called before a problem became a story. Rex showed clones how to choose names and not numbers. Cody taught junior officers how to disagree with a general without losing the room. Someone started a small office in the temple archives that matched clones to work that didn't require a rifle. Windu didn't soften. He didn't need to. He did something rarer. He stopped waiting for a perfect counsel and worked with the flawed one he had, catching their edges before they cut. Yoda visited Talor often. He walked among trees older than any Senate and watched children levitate stones, not to show off but to learn patience. He laughed more. He scolded less. He still spoke in riddles. No one minded. As for Palpatine, history would not remember the trial as a spectacle, or the verdict as catharsis. It would remember, quietly, that when the moment to act came, the Jedi did not reach for fear. They reached for each other. This timeline does not end with fireworks above the Capitol. It ends with work, ugly, necessary, ordinary work, the kind that rebuilds trust molecule by molecule. The truth is, the galaxy never needed a chosen one to bend fate. It needed a choice. The night Anakin walked out of Palpatine's office, he stood between two doors, one opened by flattery and fear, the other by humility and help. He chose the second. He called Yoda, and everything that came after, Kamino's truth, the younglings, safety, Mustafar's surrender, Order 65 instead of 66, a trial instead of a purge, a family instead of a funeral, flowed from that moment. What if Anakin consulted Yoda? Maybe the Republic wouldn't return with glory or titles. Maybe peace wouldn't come through thrones or grand victories. Maybe it would come quietly, in counsel, in patience, and forgiveness. Because asking for help isn't the end. It's the beginning of something harder. And Anakin Skywalker, he wasn't just a fallen prodigy. He was the man the galaxy had to accept, whether it was ready or not. If you enjoyed this alternative timeline, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more Star Wars stories. And may the Force be with you.